Right, in this tutorial I'm going to be teaching you how to make your own affordable version of Dolce Gabbana's lace and star print dress. A gaggle of celebrities have jumped onto the star bandwagon, and the dress that I'm going to be copying has been worn most famously by Lily Allen. First of all, I'm wearing a black dress, which I'm going to use for the tutorial. I'm just going to pin where I want to put the lace, because obviously with the lace being semi-transparent, the last thing you want is for it to be exposing some of the wrong places, shall we say. Unless you're that kind of girl, which I'm not. So if you look at the original, the first set of lace is going to be just kind of across the chest here, so that's fairly intuitive. The next piece is just under the bust, so I'm just going to pin that there. It's only the bit inside the skirt. Again, you want to leave the relevant area to the imagination, so keep the lace out of that and put some there so that it should fall roughly between sort of here and here. So just mark that. Right, once you've marked out the places that you want, where you want each slit to end and to begin on your dress, you have to lay it out flat and pin the edges together so that all the edges are touching, including along the hem, and at the side you want the side seams to be right along the edge, no excess fabric either side. Then you need this pattern master, as it is called, which I got from Plan back in 2004, so I paid within the region of £20 for mine, but it could well be more expensive at this day and age. And the reason why I like it is, and why it's ideal to use something like this, is because it's got parallel lines marked out in centimetres and half centimetres from the edge, so it's so easy to measure and get parallel lines correct. So with that in mind, we want to line your 6 centimetres up with the edge and use tailor's chalk, which I believe I also got from Plan, but since it's less specific, most good haberdashers will have such a thing, unless you want to save yourself the extra trip, of course. And measuring it just against the edge, you want to use your tailor's chalk to trace out 6 centimetre parallel line. And this is regardless, because don't worry, we can move on in 6s, which is what I'm going to do right now until we hit our pin. And if we measure the pin from the edge, that would make it about 3 centimetres, so just keep 3 centimetres from your last line. And so that should be parallel with the hem. So I'm hitting my first pin right now. And then measuring again, 6 centimetres and that. also important to make sure that you are very clear about what you want to leave and what you want to cut out, because you do not want to make that mistake. So I'm just going to put a cross here to remind myself that that's the area I want to cut out. And here. And with the areas that you do want to cut out, you want to measure 1 centimetre from the side seam, like so. Again, using the 1 centimetre parallel line from the edge on your pattern master. And then you should have something that looks like this. Once you've done that, simply cut out the rectangular areas with the X's, like so. Sleeves also revolve around much the same principle as the main body of the garment, although there's not the same pressure to get all the slits in the right place. So you can just do this pattern master goes up to 6 centimetres on the in parallel lines from the edge. So I just do mine at sort of 6 centimetre intervals. As before, you just want to pin the edges together just to make sure that everything's in the right place, and that the edges are touching each other, and that both the slits are equidistant from the cuffs. Then you want to cut them out like so and put those strips of lace in as with the rest of the garment. And here's the exciting bit where the lace comes in. This lace I bought on eBay from a seller I believe was called Bunter 117. Either way, the shop was called Gypsy Lace, and I believe they are based in Derby. This was pretty good value for money. I got 4 meters of stuff for about £4 of postage and packing, which is not to be sniffed at for a task like this. Because it's stretch lace and it's about 20 centimeters wide, so more than enough to get ample coverage. You want to, just at the end, fold it back on itself and pin it to the edge. And then just cut it, give or take a centimetre from the edge. You don't have to be precise with this, just eyeball it, enough to fold back on itself, without being too mean-spirited with lace. Just pin that in place along the edge there. And repeat the same on both sides and on all the rest of the cutout areas around the garment, including across the neckline. Once you've pinned your lace in place, you then have to just roughly tack stitch it, just to secure it before you sew it. So for that you need a needle and thread. Because it's just tack stitching, we don't have to tie and secure it in place like you would a normal stitch. Just stitch it around and let it go back on itself once, and then stitch along the bottom of the panel first. Take this pin out once you get to the end. And then stitch it back on itself. There. So now I'm going to carry on stitching along the top of here. Until you get to the end. So that top bit's nice and tacked in place. You can take this pin out of the corner now. And making sure you don't accidentally stitch through both layers, we're going to stitch it to this remaining side bit here. I find it helps to kind of put your finger between the two layers, because you're not going to stitch through that obviously, or if you did try to, by mistake, you'd know about it. So just to keep the two bits of fabric separate at the edge, so that the needle only goes through the one that it needs to, like so. Just going to fold that back again, that lace. And again, just stitch that around and back on itself. Do the same on the other side. Just going to cut that there. And after you've tacked all of your various bits of lace in place, you should have something that looks like this. And hopefully you'll see, picture quality permitting, that I've chosen a nice contrasting thread there, so that it's nice and easy to unpick once we don't need it anymore. So there you go, your dress should look like that at this particular stage. Now this next rather important part is to stop your sewing machine, once you finally come to sew it on, from chewing through all of your fabric and completely wrecking your dress. I've learnt this from my own bitter experience from sewing through jersey fabrics from other blogs. One of my parents' favourite sayings actually was that stupid people don't learn from their mistakes and smart people learn from other people's mistakes. I'm learning from other blog entries' mistakes, so I'm kind of striking a bit of a balance there. Fingers crossed. So we're going to take our pattern master again, and using the 5 centimetre mark, we are going to cut some nice long strips of this white stuff known as interfacing, which you can get from all good haberdashers generally at a very reasonable price. So I'm just making some lines there, 5 centimetres from the edge, and these are going to cover the backs of the garment where we're fixing it to the lace, so that just trying to explain it, the fabric doesn't kind of get stretched and manipulated by the feed dog of the sewing machine. This kind of keeps it still. And if you look at any applique jersey clothing, they all have it. I'm going to cut one 2 centimetres wide for the vertical edge bits. And then just cut it out along the edge. Okay, for this bit, like I say, you want to just fix the interfacing on by ironing it. So just align that with the end and make absolutely sure the sticky side, that's the slightly shiny side, perfectly covers your top stitching, because that's where we're going to fix it and that's where we're going to be sewing. So just to show you, apologies in advance for awkward camera angles, there's our stitching, and this is what we're putting over it. So using our iron on a high heat, you just want to iron that for a couple of minutes just to fix it in place. And then, because we're not going for the bandage look, just cut it when you get to the end. And sew it again in place, whilst taking extra special care, of course, not to cut your dress. And when you've fixed all of your interfacing, your dress should, from the outside, turned inside out, look rather a lot, hopefully, like this. So there's interfacing along all of the edges and all of the sides where we're going to stitch it on. And now, having got this far, you are finally ready to take the great leap of faith that is sewing the lace panels on. First of all, you want to turn your dress inside out so that you can clearly see the tack stitching. You want to program your sewing machine onto a stretch stitch. I'd recommend some kind of zigzag stitch. Your sewing machines are going to vary, but I'm going to try, like I say, a zigzaggy one, which tends to work best on jersey. With some fairly good light. Just sew it on along the edge in black thread. Use the hopefully contrasting tack stitching as your guide, going as close to the edge as possible. The edge of your lace, that is. And now, finally, for the most fun part of the lot, I'm going to show you how I got the stars on the dress. You need some foam shapes like these, which I got in a pack worth about £3 from John Lewis. what you need to do is just sketch out a star kind of roughly like you would on a school book during a moment of boredom at school. And when you're satisfied with that, just cut it out using a scalpel, ideally with a fresh, sharp blade. And then taking a blob of blue tack, here's a stamp I made earlier, but just to demonstrate again, roll it into a sausage shape, put it on the back of your star, making sure it sticks well. And then using a tub of white fabric paint, this isn't the one that I normally like to use, but the one I usually like to use is about £2, and it's by Dylon. Shake it, and then using the cap as your palette, take your star stamper, dunk it in, wipe it on the edges just to make sure that it isn't smudged, then put it on your garment. And if it's not fully covered, don't worry. I like to use the end of a biro just to sort of tidy it up, because you get quite an even coverage and on quite a clean, sharp point. Like so. And repeat this until your entire dress is covered. After you've painted on all your stars, you should have something that looks rather a lot like this. Once again, this is my version of the Dolce Gabbana star print and lace insert dress. Hope you enjoyed watching it and have fun making your own.